Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to Brave Animals on YouTube. Here we honor the most unbelievable true stories of animals who protect, expose, and heal. Hit that button, because the next animal hero may just change your life, or save it. It all started with a bark. Not just any bark, but the kind that makes you stop dead in your tracks. The kind that turns heads. The kind that says, something isn't right here. It came from Briggs, the new German Shepherd K9 assigned to Oak Ridge Elementary. And it wasn't random. He was barking at a little girl's lunchbox. It was just before noon on a cool Thursday in late fall. The cafeteria buzzed with the usual chaos of third graders trading cookies for chips and laughing over soggy pizza. Emily Carter, a quiet 8-year-old who mostly kept to herself, had just unzipped her pink thermal lunch tote when Briggs let out that deep, gut-shaking growl. Officer Tully, Briggs's handler, had been talking with Principal Myers near the back entrance. The second Briggs barked, Tully snapped to attention. Briggs didn't stop. He lunged forward, his nose locked on Emily's lunchbox like a heat-seeking missile. She froze. Her pale hands clutched the handle tighter. Her brown eyes darted around, wide and terrified. "Emily, honey," Mrs. Brennan, the cafeteria aide, said, gently walking over. "Is there something wrong?" Emily shook her head, but Briggs barked again, louder. And this time, every child near her went silent. Lunches were forgotten. Conversations dropped. Even the janitor stopped mid-mop. Something about the way that dog stood, rigid, alert, refusing to back down, told everyone this wasn't just a sniff of curiosity. Officer Tully moved in. He crouched down next to Emily. "Sweetheart," he said, voice low but firm. "Can I take a look inside your lunchbox?" Emily clutched it tighter. "My mom said not to let anyone touch it." Behind her, kids started whispering. Emily, the quiet girl. Emily, the loner. Emily with the same lunchbox every day. "I promise I'll be careful," Tully said. "But Briggs is trained to sniff out danger, and right now he thinks something in there could hurt people." Hurt people? The room rippled with unease. Emily's lip trembled. Her small fingers slowly unzipped the bag. What fell out wasn't a sandwich or fruit. It was a small cloth pouch wrapped in duct tape stained faintly red at the corners. As it hit the floor, a second item tumbled out. A plastic keychain drive. Briggs barked again, now in full defense mode. Mrs. Brennan gasped. Someone dropped their juice box. Principal Myers walked over, picked up the pouch with a gloved napkin, and stared at it like it might explode. "Tully," she said, her voice thin and cracking, "we need to lock this school down right now and call the FBI." Within 15 minutes, Oak Ridge Elementary was on soft lockdown. No one in, no one out. Parents were notified of an incident, but no one knew what was really happening. Not yet. Emily was escorted to the nurse's office with Mrs. Brennan and a counselor. Officer Tully and Principal Myers met with the school resource officer and connected with the nearest field office of the FBI. No one knew what was inside the cloth. No one wanted to guess, but someone needed to check the USB that someone was Principal Myers herself. She inserted it into her office laptop, her hands shaking as the screen blinked to life. The files weren't encrypted, just labeled Room 4, Dark Door, Teeth, Noonleaves.mp4. She clicked one. It was video footage, shaky, dimly lit, from a small handheld camera. The video showed what looked like a basement. A bare mattress, a child, maybe 6, maybe 7, curled into the corner, crying. The timestamp read August 14th, 2018. And then someone stepped into the frame. Wearing a mask, Myers slammed the laptop shut. She was already dialing. "FBI, yes. This is Principal Janet Myers of Oak Ridge Elementary. We've got something. No, someone. Something you're going to want to see immediately." Back in the nurse's office, Emily sat quietly, hands in her lap. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just stared at her knees. Mrs. Brennan brought her some water. "I didn't want to bring it," Emily whispered. Brennan blinked. "What, sweetie?" "The pouch. My mom said if anyone ever opened it, I'd be taken away." She said people wouldn't understand. Brennan sat very still. Emily looked up. But I think maybe. Briggs understood, and she smiled. Just a little. By the time the FBI arrived, the entire school was silent. The FBI's Child Exploitation and Cybercrime Task Force took over the case. They analyzed the video files, ran facial recognition, enhanced audio. The red-stained pouch was sent for DNA testing. It would take weeks for results, but preliminary analysis suggested human blood, not fresh. Emily was placed into protective custody immediately. Her mother, no one knew much about her, had never been seen at a PTA meeting, had no emergency, contact on file, and worked night shifts cleaning office buildings. What she had sent her daughter to school with was no accident, and what Briggs had sensed was something no one else could have predicted. Outside, the kids were finally allowed to go home. Briggs sat beside Officer Tully in the patrol SUV, tail still, ears forward, as if he were waiting for a command that hadn't yet come. But his job that day? It was already done. Because sometimes it's not a weapon or a bomb or a scream that signals danger. Sometimes it's just the way a child zips her lunchbox and a dog who refuses to let it go. By the time Emily's mother pulled into the driveway, that evening the sun was already dipping behind the maples and the FBI was waiting with unmarked vehicles parked 2 houses down. A neighbor across the street watered her petunias like nothing was happening, but her eyes never left the scene. It wasn't every day that a canine dog sniffed out something at an elementary school that led to a federal investigation. Agent Keller stood with his arms crossed outside the 1-story ranch house with peeling paint and a roof that looked a decade overdue for repairs. He had been with the Bureau for 17 years, and in all that time, he had never seen a case like this begin with a lunchbox. He looked down at Briggs, who was sitting alert beside Officer Tully. The dog wasn't barking now, but his eyes were fixed on the front door like he already knew something inside would never leave him. Inside the house, there was nothing obviously wrong at first glance. A lived-in home, sparse furniture, some old toys. One photograph of Emily framed in a dollar store frame on a dusty end table. No photos of the mother. No father in sight. Agent Keller walked past the living room and stopped at a hallway with worn carpet. Briggs was now leading the way, nose close to the floor, then suddenly veering left into a narrow pantry beside the kitchen. He pawed at the floor. Tully knelt and pulled up the mat. A trapdoor, not locked, just carefully hidden. The crawl space smelled of bleach and something else. Something old. Agent Keller turned on his flashlight and descended. The space was low. You had to crouch. It wasn't a full basement, just a makeshift storage area lined with plastic containers. He opened the first. Inside were children's clothes, tiny shoes, a worn blue hoodie with a cartoon dinosaur. It had blood stains around the sleeve. He opened another. Photographs, printed from old digital cameras, some torn, some burnt around the edges. Most were of kids, but none of them were Emily. In the back corner, behind a shelf covered in canned goods and expired cereal, was a wooden box. Locked. The key wasn't hard to find, taped underneath. Inside were several more USB sticks, each labeled with a different child's name. Briggs let out a low growl. Agent Keller stood up slowly. We need a forensic team down here now. While the agents scoured the house for more evidence, Emily sat in a small conference room at the Child Advocacy Center just outside town. A counselor named Dana, who had handled over 40 child interviews that year, sat across from her with a clipboard and the gentlest voice she could muster. Do you know why you're here, Emily? She asked softly. Emily nodded. Can you tell me? Because of what was in my lunch. Dana gave her a reassuring smile. That's right. Do you know what it was? Emily looked down at her knees. The red rag? I don't think it was for me. I think it was for them. For who, sweetie? Emily hesitated. The ones who didn't get out. Dana's heart dropped a beat. Get out from where? Emily whispered. From the dark room. Back at the house, the forensic team found what they were afraid of. Under the floorboards in the laundry room was a hidden crawlspace much deeper than the first. There were signs it had been used recently. Chains, a small cot, scratches on the wall that had been painted over. But what chilled everyone to the bone was the scent. The unmistakable metallic hint of dried blood that not even bleach could cover. They took swabs, measured everything, took photographs. One agent quietly stepped outside to throw up in the bushes. Officer Tully sat on the curb with Briggs staring at the quiet street. Children's bicycles rested against garages. A father across the way grilled burgers like it was any other Thursday. How did nobody see this? Tully muttered. Briggs didn't move. That night, Agent Keller returned to the advocacy center. Emily was coloring when he walked in. She looked up at him with eyes too tired for someone her age. He knelt beside her. "Emily, can I ask you something important?" She nodded. "Where did you get the pouch you brought to school?" She didn't answer right away. "I didn't steal it," she said finally. "It was under the floor." Keller's brow furrowed. "You found it?" She nodded. "They forgot to take it, or maybe they left it for me." "Who's they?" Emily stared at her drawing. A house, a girl, and a dog that looked just like Briggs. "My mom said not to tell. But I don't think she's really my mom." Keller blinked. "She picked me," Emily continued. "She said I was special. That the others were too noisy, too scared. I wasn't. I always listened. So I got to go upstairs." Keller felt something crack in his chest. He wanted to say something. Anything. But Emily was already focused back on her drawing. "Do you think Briggs will come visit me?" she asked. "Yes," he said quietly. "I think he'd like that very much." The FBI issued an immediate arrest warrant for the woman who raised Emily, but by the time they arrived at her night shift cleaning job, she was already gone. Her car was found abandoned near a state park 20 miles out. Blood in the seat. No body, no phone, no clues. Inside her locker were letters, dozens. Some dated over a decade ago. All from the same man. A man who had once worked in a foster placement agency and had vanished in 2014. The case was now bigger than anyone imagined. Not just a missing child, not just a hidden basement. It was a ring. And the first real lead had come from a K-9 named Briggs, who hadn't let a lunchbox go unnoticed. As for Emily, she was placed with a temporary foster family. She kept asking to see Briggs. So they arranged it. The moment the dog walked into the backyard, Emily lit up in a way no one had seen before. She hugged his neck, buried her face in his fur, and whispered, "You found the ones who didn't get out." Briggs licked her cheek gently. Some stories start with a cry for help. Others start with a whisper no one hears. But this one? This one started with a bark. And Briggs wasn't done barking yet. The case had already made the local news by Saturday. Most parents only knew the basics. A young girl brought something suspicious to school. The FBI got involved, and now a full-scale investigation was underway. But what the public didn't know, what only a handful of agents, officers, and one remarkable dog knew, was that the horror stretched back years. Briggs stayed by Officer Tully's side as they drove toward the next lead. Emily's statement had opened doors they didn't even know existed. She didn't have dates or names, but she had memories, and they were starting to line up with real, unsolved cases. Emily said the man with the ring tattoo smelled like lemons. Tully told Agent Keller, flipping through a notepad, and that he whistled show tunes. Keller nodded slowly. There was a tip in the Henderson file from 2019. A neighbor heard someone whistling, singing in the rain the night a girl went missing. Backed up by another neighbor who remembered, a guy with citrus aftershave. That's not something a kid would invent. No, Keller agreed. It's something they remember. Briggs shifted in the back seat. He was always alert now, like he knew every second mattered. At the safe house, Emily sat cross-legged on the carpet with a coloring book and a peanut butter sandwich. The foster family was kind, warm, and quiet. She liked quiet. Dana, the child counselor, returned with a small black binder. "Emily," she said gently, "do you remember this man?" She slid a picture across the table. It was a surveillance image of a man at a bus terminal. The photo was grainy, his face turned slightly, but Emily didn't even blink. He's the one who wore gloves, even when it was hot. Do you know his name? Emily shook her head. They never used names. They used numbers. Dana's stomach turned. What was his number? 3. Dana noted it down. Did 3 ever come to your house? Emily looked up. Only once. He brought a baby. That line sat in the air like a dropped plate. Back at the bureau, Agent Keller ran facial recognition on the terminal photo. It came back with a possible match. Martin Reeves, former employee at a private group home in southern Ohio. No current address. Left the system in 2015 after allegations were filed by a coworker but dropped due to lack of evidence. Keller stared at the report, fists tightening. I want every piece of footage from that bus terminal, he said to the tech analyst. If that man brought a baby, we may have a window. An hour later, they had it. A video feed from 5 weeks earlier. Reeves, carrying a baby wrapped in a blue blanket, approached a woman in a white van. They talked. He handed her a brown envelope. Then the woman drove away. They tracked the license plate to a small rural property in Kentucky. They took Briggs with them. The drive out was quiet. The team knew better than to go in unprepared. They had local sheriff support, child welfare agents on standby, and a warrant ready to be served. The house was set back a quarter-mile from the main road, hidden behind trees and a rusted gate. There were toys in the yard, but no sound. Briggs jumped down from the SUV the second it stopped. He didn't wait for instruction. His nose was working. He followed the scent past the porch, around the back of the house, and to a shed. A baby cried, from inside. Officer Tully broke the lock. The shed was dark, moldy, and stank of neglect. In the corner was a crib, if you could call it that, made from crates and blankets. A baby no more than 5 months old lay swaddled inside. There was formula nearby, unopened. No sign of the woman, no sign of Reeves. But Briggs had done it again. They brought the baby out gently, wrapped in a fresh blanket. A local nurse examined the child immediately. Malnourished but stable. No injuries, no ID. Dana met them at the hospital. When she heard the baby had been found, she brought Emily along just in case. Emily stared at the bundle in the nurse's arms. That's him, she said quietly. That's the baby 3 brought. His name is Micah. Everyone froze. You remember that? Dana asked. Emily nodded. He cried a lot. They said that's why they had to move him. Dana put a hand on her back. It's over now. But in her heart, she knew it wasn't. Not really. At the bureau, a timeline was forming. Reeves had been part of a larger ring operating under the radar for years, trading in children for reasons that made even hardened agents lose sleep. The video evidence recovered from Emily's lunchbox was only the beginning. The new USBs found in her house matched with names from missing persons databases going back 2 decades. And yet, the deeper they dug, the more they realized how much had been buried. Briggs became a fixture in the office. He didn't just help with detection, he helped with healing. When the other kids brought in for questioning cried, he would sit with them, let them pet his fur, listen without a word. Sometimes, silence is the only language that makes people feel safe. Emily started smiling more. She asked to help walk Briggs. She drew pictures of him catching bad guys. She stopped asking for her mom, because in her heart she knew that woman had never been her mother, and the man with the citrus scent had never been her friend. But the dog who barked at her lunch, he had saved her life. Late one evening, Agent Keller stood in the hallway outside the children's therapy wing. He watched through the glass as Emily lay on a beanbag chair, Briggs's head resting gently in her lap. Dana stood beside him. She's sleeping better, she said. She's safer. Now. For now, Dana said. But there are more kids out there somewhere. Keller nodded. And we're going to find them. Behind the glass, Emily stirred. Her hand still rested on Briggs's fur, and in that moment there was no fear. No lunchbox, no locked basement, just a girl, and the dog who wouldn't stop barking. The deeper the bureau went into the files recovered from Emily's house, the darker the path became. Each USB stick contained fragments, not just videos or photos, but scanned documents, scraps of letters, lists of names that seemed coded, until one wasn't. File 9, labeled Forgotten Rain. Zip held a spreadsheet. It looked like gibberish. Dozens of rows, initials, locations, symbols. But in the middle of it, clear as day, sat a name, A. Carter, transfer approved, code 318, handler. M.R. Keller sat back in his chair, heart pounding. Carter, he said. That's Emily's last name. Agent Rhodes leaned in beside him. M.R. has to be Martin Reeves. And transfer approved? Who transfers a child like a shipping order? They both knew the answer before saying it. People who didn't see kids as people. Meanwhile, Emily had started speaking more during her counseling sessions. It wasn't always clear or linear, but pieces of truth leaked out like drops from a cracked faucet. She remembered a gray room with lights that buzzed. She remembered being woken up by hands that didn't speak. She remembered a girl with red hair who used to sing. She was brave, Emily said to Dana. She said they couldn't break us if we made up songs. Dana noted every detail, knowing full well they weren't just memories, they were leads that might save someone else. Do you remember her name? Emily hesitated. Her real name was Hope, but they called her Number 8. Dana wrote it down, slowly underlining it. Back at the bureau, Briggs was busy working a new angle. The team had obtained surveillance footage from multiple bus terminals and convenience stores near the last known movements of Reeves. One clip, from a gas station in Missouri, showed something strange. Reeves wasn't alone. He handed a backpack to a man in a camo jacket and brown boots. The man's face was partially hidden by a trucker cap, but as he leaned over, a patch on his shoulder became visible. A faded eagle with the letters PASC under it. What is that? Rhodes asked. Keller zoomed in. That's not a real agency. Then what is it? Keller typed furiously. A few minutes later, he leaned back, jaw tight. It's a front. Private Adoption Support Coalition. On the surface, they help place difficult children in homes. But their tax filing stopped 3 years ago, and no one answers their listed phone numbers. Rhodes glanced at Briggs, who was curled up under the desk but not asleep. Think he could sniff them out? Keller nodded. He's already ahead of us. That weekend, they raided a warehouse listed under the PASC Foundation. It sat on the edge of an industrial park outside Tulsa, Oklahoma. Abandoned on the surface, but behind the rotted loading dock was a reinforced metal door. Inside, they found an office, and a wall covered in photos. Children, dozens of them, Polaroids with codes written on the backs. In the bottom corner was a corkboard with string linking names and numbers. In the center was a label, Tier 1, Quiet, Tier 2, Defiant, Tier 3, Disposable. One of the pinned photos was of a red-haired girl, no name. Just Number 8. The agents moved carefully, documenting everything. In a filing cabinet, they found purchase orders that made no sense. A shipment of 3 under Tier 1. A failed Tier 3 to be disposed of within protocol window. Keller couldn't read anymore. He walked outside and leaned against the SUV, eyes burning. Briggs followed him. The dog nudged his hand gently, then sat beside him. Keller crouched down and whispered, "You're the only one who saw this before." "We did." Briggs didn't move. He didn't need to. Back at the safe house, Dana sat with Emily in the garden. The fall leaves were turning. Emily liked the red ones best. "Do you miss her?" Dana asked. Emily looked confused. "Hope," Dana said softly. Emily nodded. "She said if I ever got away to tell someone, but I was scared, until Briggs barked." She picked up a fallen leaf and twirled it in her fingers. "He knew I was hiding something. He made it okay to stop." Dana placed a hand on her shoulder. "I think Hope would be proud of you," she said. Emily didn't smile, but she didn't cry either. The FBI launched a nationwide alert. The photos from the warehouse were encrypted and sent to every missing children database across the country. Facial recognition software worked overtime. They got 3 matches in 24 hours. Hope was not among them, but they had leads, and they had names, and most of all, they had Briggs. He had already uncovered what no one else could. 2 days later, another video surfaced. An anonymous email sent to the FBI's secure line. The file was labeled Echo08.mp4. In it, a masked figure sat in a dim room, holding a photo of Hope. "Stop digging," the voice said. "Some truths were buried for a reason." Then the camera panned down. There was a collar on the table. Dog tags, Briggs's tags. Agent Keller stared at the screen. "They're watching us," he said. Rhodes added quietly, "They're watching him." They both looked at Briggs sleeping under the desk. He was still just a dog, but to them, he was something more now. He was the one who cracked the silence. And someone didn't like that. Late that night, Keller visited the safe house. He didn't want to alarm Emily, but she needed to know. He brought Briggs with him. Emily opened the door before he knocked. She had been waiting. "Are they angry at him?" she asked. Keller knelt beside her. "Maybe, but that means we're close." Emily looked at Briggs. "He's not scared." "No," Keller said. "He's brave." Emily reached out, petting Briggs gently. "Then I'll be brave too." She walked inside, looked over her shoulder and added, "We'll find Hope." Keller stood quietly at the door for a moment before replying, "Yes, we will." And this time, they wouldn't stop until every missing child had a name. It had been nearly 3 weeks since Briggs barked at Emily's lunchbox, and already the world around them had changed. News of the secret files, the recovered children, and the arrest warrants issued across 3 states had broken into national headlines. Phrases like "trafficking network hidden in plain sight" and "the girl who carried the truth in her lunchbox" filled news tickers and morning talk shows. But while the country was just waking up to what happened, for the people closest to the case, it had never gone to sleep. At the FBI field office, Agent Keller stood in front of a map on the wall. Red pins marked places where missing children had been traced back to the ring. Blue pins showed recent raids. In the center of it all, a yellow pin marked a small house in Oak Ridge, the place where Briggs had first barked. Keller turned to Rhodes, who held a thin file. "We got a hit," Rhodes said. "The man in the gas station footage, the one with the PASC patch, was identified. Randall Fisk. Former Army, dishonorably discharged. Last known address was in Tennessee." "Do we have him?" "Not yet," Rhodes replied. "But we traced a burner phone used to upload that video. Of Briggs' dog tags it pinged outside a warehouse in Memphis. And we got a voice match," Rhodes said. "It's him. He's the one who threatened us." Keller looked toward the corner where Briggs lay at his usual post. The dog's eyes were half closed, but one ear twitched as if he knew the room. Had gone quiet. "We bring him in," Keller said. "Alive." The raid happened at dawn. The Memphis warehouse was surrounded silently, carefully. No sirens, no shouting, just teams moving like shadows. Inside, Randall Fisk was asleep on a cot made of packing blankets and cardboard. He didn't resist. He didn't even seem surprised. As they cuffed him, he looked directly at Briggs, who stood beside Tully. "He really found her," Fisk said, almost like it was admiration. "I didn't think she'd ever talk." "She didn't," Keller said, stepping forward. "He did." Fisk was taken into custody and transferred to a secure federal facility. No bail, no visitors. Only one condition: Emily would get to see him. The decision wasn't made lightly. Dana argued it might re-traumatize her, but Emily insisted. She said she needed to know if he remembered Hope, and more importantly, she needed to say something. The meeting was arranged in a monitored interview room with two-way glass and full surveillance. Keller, Rhodes, Dana, and Tully sat in the observation booth. Briggs waited outside the room but paced like he wanted in. Emily sat at the table first, legs swinging just above the floor. Then Fisk entered. He looked thinner than before, hollow eyes, but when he saw her, he smiled faintly. "You got taller," he said. Emily didn't blink. "Do you remember number 8? She asked. Fisk tilted his head. "You mean Hope?" Emily nodded. "She was a problem," he said casually. "Didn't follow rules, thought she could sing her way out. What happened to her?" Fisk shrugged. "We moved her. That's all I was told." Emily's hands curled into fists. "You hurt her." "I didn't," he said. "But I let others do worse. That's the truth." Silence stretched across the table. "Why?" Emily asked. Fisk didn't answer right away. Then he leaned in. "Because I believed in it. That's the part no one understands. We thought we were fixing broken kids, giving them order, a system, until it got out of hand." "It was always out of hand," Emily said. She stood up, and for the first time she looked stronger than him. As she turned to leave, she said one last thing. "She sang to keep me alive. That's more than you ever did." Outside, Briggs waited, at the door. Emily dropped to her knees and hugged his neck. "He knows where she is," she whispered. "He just doesn't want to say it." Dana knelt beside her. "Then we'll find someone who will." The next break came not from Fisk, but from a pattern in the old files. One of the coded numbers in the spreadsheet, Tier 318, showed up on a property lease in rural Arkansas. It had been listed under a fake nonprofit but paid monthly by a ghost. Account tied to Fisk Keller led the team. The property was tucked behind a gravel road with no signage and no mail. The house was gone, burned down years ago, but the root cellar remained. Briggs barked the moment they opened the door. Inside, beneath a tarp, were boxes, water-damaged, moldy. But one box had a plastic bag labeled simply, Aero 8. Inside were clothes, a hairbrush, and a small notebook. It was Hope's. The pages were messy, written in crayon and pencil, but one entry stood out. "If I don't make it out, tell the girl with quiet eyes, she kept me brave." Dana cried when she read it. Emily didn't. She just nodded and said, "She's still with me." Later that week, a press conference was held. Fisk's face was broadcast nationwide. The ring was officially declared dismantled. Survivors were being connected with new homes, trauma services, and, where possible, their biological families. But when asked how the entire case began, Keller stepped to the microphone and said, "Just one word, Briggs." He told the story of a dog who barked at a lunchbox, who wouldn't let a secret stay hidden, who protected a child when no one else saw the danger. A reporter asked, "Is Briggs retiring now?" Keller smiled. "No," he said. "He's just getting started." That night, Emily drew something new. It was a picture of her and Briggs standing in front of a door. The door was open. Behind it was light. Hope stood in the doorway singing. Emily colored her hair the brightest red she could. She didn't need anyone to tell her that not every story has a perfect ending. But thanks to one bark in a school lunchroom, this story finally had justice, and she wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. The sun was shining bright over Washington, D.C., and outside the Capitol steps, a small crowd had gathered for a ceremony few expected would ever happen. At the front of the podium stood Emily Carter, now dressed in a pale yellow dress with her hair in soft curls. She was taller, a little stronger, but still had that quiet look in her eyes. Standing beside her with a small red, white, and blue ribbon clipped gently to his collar was Briggs. He looked almost confused by all the clapping. The crowd of reporters, senators, FBI officials, and students from Oak Ridge Elementary had all shown up for him. They were there to celebrate the hero who started it all. 2 months had passed since Randall Fisk's arrest. In that time, 15 missing children had been rescued thanks to the digital evidence Briggs helped uncover. Several more cases had been reopened. A nationwide task force had been formed, focused solely on identifying the remaining faces from the warehouse photos. Emily had testified behind closed doors. She had faced questions, timelines, uncomfortable memories, and through it all, Briggs sat at her side. When her voice cracked, he pressed his head into her lap. When the room got too cold, she buried her fingers in his fur. They were more than girl and dog now. They were evidence of something rare, resilience, in its purest form. As the audience settled, Agent Keller stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "today we honor a member of law enforcement who can't sign his own name, drive a car, or file a report. But he did something none of us could. He saw what we didn't. He listened when no one else did. He barked when it mattered most." He looked down at Briggs, who sat still but alert, sensing something important was happening. Briggs didn't just save Emily. He cracked open a case that was buried in silence and fear. He reminded us that instinct, loyalty, and heart are sometimes more powerful than badges and degrees. The crowd applauded. Emily reached down and kissed Briggs on the head. "Good boy," she whispered. Later that afternoon, Emily sat with Dana under the cherry trees that were just starting to bloom. "I still dream about the place sometimes," she said. Dana nodded. "That's normal. Healing doesn't mean forgetting." Emily traced her finger along a leaf. "I think Hope would have liked today. She would have loved it," Dana said. Emily looked over at Briggs, who was lying in the grass, rolling onto his back like he had no care in the world. "Do you think he knows what he did?" she asked. Dana smiled. "I think he knows you're safe, and that's enough for him." That night, at the quiet foster home where Emily now lived with a retired schoolteacher and her husband, she placed the ribbon Briggs received into a small wooden box on her bookshelf. Next to it, she put the crayon drawing she'd made of Hope. On the back of the paper, she wrote one sentence. She sang until someone heard. Across the country, people began asking different questions. How could something so horrific hide behind something as ordinary as a lunchbox? How had no one noticed? And perhaps the most difficult of all, why did it take a dog to see what humans missed? Keller, now promoted to lead a permanent child rescue unit, answered that question in an interview weeks later. "Sometimes we're so busy checking rules, procedures, protocols," he said, "that we overlook what's right in front of us." But Briggs didn't care about any of that. He just knew something was wrong. And he didn't stop. The interviewer leaned in. "What do you think we can learn from that?" Keller looked directly at the camera. "To trust our instincts, to listen closer, and to never underestimate who the real heroes might be." Emily kept in touch with the other rescued kids. Some were still scared. Some didn't talk much yet. But they all had something in common now. They knew they weren't alone. Once a week, Emily would write a letter to one of them. She ended each letter the same way. "Remember the dog who barked? He was barking for you too." Years from now, maybe someone will tell this story differently. Maybe they'll focus on the agents or the courtroom victories or the data recovered. But those of us who were there, who watched it unfold, will remember, one moment most of all, the sound of a bark inside a school cafeteria. A bark that changed everything, because it wasn't just a bark. It was the sound of a secret finally being heard, a truth clawing its way into the light, a child being seen, and a nation being asked one simple question: what else are we ignoring just because it doesn't make noise?